Welcome to the Goulburn Township Historical Society presentation on preparing, pouring, and storing. I'm Lynn Blank, and I'm a reenactor. We're kind of a strange bunch, and I find it very difficult to define what it is exactly that we do, so I consulted the Cambridge Dictionary, which defined reenact as to repeat the actions of an event that happened in the past as a hobby or as a performance. That pretty much covers it. In short, we learn about the past by reliving it to some extent. I'm a member of the 84th Regiment of Foot. We're a group that reenacts life in the late 18th century, specifically the period from 1775 to 1783, the time of the American War of Independence, which had a pivotal effect on Canada's history. Over this period, refugees, or loyalists, were driven from what is now the United States, and they flooded Upper and Lower Canada. Some were loyal to the king and refused to take up arms against the government. Others, maybe most of them, were law-abiding citizens who simply refused to commit acts of treason and rebellion. Still others had no opinion either way, but were driven out by neighbors who saw an opportunity to help themselves to their homes and possessions, or to settle old scores. In truth, this was a civil war which pitted neighbors and family members against each other. There was no tolerance for pacifism whatsoever. Committees of correspondence, committees of inspection, committees of safety were established by locals as a shadow government to maintain control over each area and to report on any activity which they perceived as a threat to the rebellion. They visited families. They demanded that they sign documents pledging support to the cause. Those who refused to sign were subject to imprisonment, sometimes for years at a time, in absolutely appalling conditions, and their lands and goods were confiscated. Their families were punished. It was a time of mob rule. So here I am in the 18th century, the wife of a sergeant of the 84th Regiment of Foot, Royal Highland Emigrants. My husband has received his rations lately, so I thought I would get started cooking dinner soon. It's Sunday, so I think we'll have a nice dinner. I've managed to get some other things, too, to supplement his rations. But what we have, to begin with, is a 2-pound loaf of bread. Now, 2 pounds is what he would receive over 2 days. So this is 2 days' ration. And 1 1/7 ounces of rice, or oatmeal, whichever we have. He gets either a pound of flour or a pound of bread, depending. So we're going to cook the flour because it's easier to transport when it's cooked. Since we're in garrison, we have lots of dishes and things, but you never know when we're going to be ordered out. So if I can make my food more easily transportable, I'll do that first. We also have peas. This is a daily ration of peas. And the meat. Now this is a lovely chunk of meat. Isn't that a lovely piece of pork? There's no bones and no grizzle. So he gets 9 1/7 ounces of pork a day, but if it's mostly bone, then it's not as much fun to eat. Now this is one of the men's rations. I get, as a civilian member of the unit and a camp follower, I get a half ration. And any children under 10 years old would get a quarter ration. So today I thought I would get going making dinner, and maybe we'll chat as I do that. Oh, where shall I start? I'm going to start by making peas porridge, because it takes a long time for the porridge to cook. Let's see. Here we are. Oh! Apples. I was able to forage some apples. Aren't those lovely? I've started drying some, and the others I'm hoping to do later in the day to get them started.
Preserving fruit is always an issue. When I was in the Mohawk Valley, we were able to do some preserves, but I don't have any crocks. The crocks are breakable and they're heavy. So the only way I really know how to do it is to dry the fruit, and that way it's light and transportable and will hopefully see us through the winter. I'm going to need a little bit more fire, so I'll expand it, I think. We've been very lucky with the amount of firewood we have. Firewood's always an issue. There's so much work in creating a fire. So, let's see. I said I'd start with the apple pandau. Or no, I didn't. I said I would start with the peas porridge. So, this should be. I'm not going to cook his whole day's ration because then we'll have used the whole day, his ration in one meal. That would be a sad state of affairs, wouldn't it? So I'll leave that on there to warm up. And let's see what else we have. Oh, the peas. I soaked yesterday's ration of peas so that I can cook them for the peas porridge. Otherwise, it would just take too long. And I was able to buy some fresh vegetables. Now, this is a bit of an issue these days. Vegetables. We don't get them with the army. That's not part of the ration. But we know we need vegetables to ward off scurvy. The men are given spruce beer, and that helps. And sometimes things like lemon juice, if we're able to get it, or lime juice. But that's an issue. It's not always available. So the spruce beer helps, but better yet is fruits and vegetables if we can obtain them. There are so many refugees here though, and the locals have not been able to grow enough, because they haven't been here all that long either, to feed their own families and to get them through the winter and the long spring until the crops are edible. So it's been a bit of an issue. Well, time to have a look and see how my pork is doing. Oh, not bad. It's coming along. I think I'll need this. Here we are. Now then, all the other lovely things I was going to put in my peas porridge, I will clean these things and pop them in as soon as the peas are ready to go in. As I say, we've been very lucky with our ration of wood. Sometimes it's very difficult to get it, and sometimes it's simply not safe to leave Garrison to get wood, in which case it becomes very difficult to do the cooking. In order to save wood, sometimes we can use a brazier like this. It has charcoal in it, and it gives me a very small cooking surface, but everything cooks very quickly, so that's a good alternative. Unfortunately, it's quite heavy, so I can only use it in Garrison. The men don't take them with them when they're out in the field. Now, these are very small carrots considering it's September. Oh well, I'm lucky to get anything at all, I must say. I do miss, as I said, being in Mohawk Valley. We were so fortunate there and so well established, but things change, and I suppose I should count my blessings because it could be so much worse. All right, well, as they say, a little dirt adds flavor. Let's see what else we have. Oh, and this. Now this will probably take quite a while. But if I just keep track of it while I'm doing other chores, no doubt when we have our meal, it will be all right. Now these peas have swelled up very nicely. I'm hoping that they'll cook more quickly because of it. This is a brazier. So to get my pot closer to the fire, I can put it on a brazier. I'm also going to need a bed of hot coals for the apple pan dowdy, which is going to happen at some point. What am I doing? There we are. So I'll start some wood there. Can you hear the wood sizzling, or the pork sizzling? Oh, there we are. It's coming along nicely. And now we'll put the peas in. Now fresh peas would be nice, of course, but unfortunately most of our supplies are shipped in from the British Isles, Scotland, Ireland, or England, of course. And by the time they get here, they'll have been in a ship for months. And there are more issues nowadays with getting our shipments because the rebels have been giving some trouble to our ships. So we normally lose ships because of navigation problems, or ships that founder or are lost at sea. But add to that the issues with this horrible rebellion, and we really never know what we're going to get and what shape it's going to be in. Quite often the salt pork is full of maggots, and we just need to make best what we can get. There's not much we can do about it. One of the problems is the pork barrels are shipped, they're very heavy. And when the voyageurs receive the barrels and need to transport them to where we are, because of the weight, they drain off the pork brine. And then when they get it to the destination, they refill the barrel with plain water instead of the salt water that the pork was pickled in. As a result, the pork is badly spoiled by the time it's received here. It's unfortunate. In a way, I understand the issue with the poor voyageurs work hard enough. But it does mean that the bulk of our rations are spoiled or infested with bugs. We also have a good deal of trouble with flour lately. It's hard to find good flour, and of course, with a war going on, unfortunately, the grain fields are typically burned by one side or the other so that we can't make use of it. And the end result is civilians, people with families, everyone is left trying to cope and find food. So we're all in competition for scarce rations. Well, again, no point in complaining, because complaining won't help. Now, I did say that I was going to cook this meat. And the flies are enjoying it much more than the sergeant will if I don't hurry up and do something about it. I think I'll put a cloth over it for now. There. Time for my next project. I feel very fortunate that I was able to trade for these things. As you can see, I got a couple of very fine onions and some young carrots, and that's the carrots and parsnips and some beans. Well, I'm just going to pop the rest of these beans in. Look at my soup. It is boiling up very nicely. It won't be long, perhaps. And there we are. Someone local had some very nice pole beans. All right. Now, I think we need more water. It's boiling away very nicely. And I was also able to get some rosemary, a little sprig of rosemary. Isn't that nice? Pop that in. And isn't this nice? Parsley, fresh parsley. I haven't seen that in a while. I'm very excited. Sunday dinner is going to be lovely. All right. I'll just stir this up. The foam is because of the pork that I put in. And since the sergeant is doing all right, I was able to get some cloves. So I'm going to put cloves in. Again, another treat. Oh my, these flies. Let's see, what happens if I do this? Perhaps that will discourage them. The next thing I'm going to make is hoe cakes. A very old thing. You've probably had them. Since we're only issued flour, the men need to cook their own bread at times, especially when they're out in the field. let's put, our rations include salt on occasion. So put a little bit of salt in there and some water. You need to, here, I'll tip it so you can see. It's just flour and water. It's a bit wetter than I would like. There we are. Now, this stone has been heating. How warm is it? Not all that warm. We'll get it a little closer. Try that and see how it goes. Oh my. There, I can just put them right in the ashes. That's why they're called ash cakes or hoe cakes. Hoe cakes because sometimes we end up just cooking them on whatever implement is handy, and sometimes that's a hoe. This is 1 full ration of flour for a day. And that's hoe cakes. We'll let those bake. And then the last thing that we are going to do, because it's Sunday, is apple pan dowdy. We haven't had that for a long time, so this is quite exciting. This, what you see here, is a Dutch oven. Now, since we're in Garrison, we have these heavy pots. Obviously, if we were out in the field, that wouldn't happen. They weigh so much. Carrying them would be very impractical. But for now, we will enjoy what we have. So I'm going to heat this here, and I'm going to need, where's my pot hook? Here we are. I'm probably going to need to move around the fire a little bit. So, I'll pop this over there. It's a good, nice warm spot. And now for the apple pan dowdy. My pot is heating. Look at these lovely apples. I saved the very best of them for the apple pan dowdy. The others are going to get dried. I need them to dry in the sun, so I don't want to cover them, but my goodness, those flies are quite something, aren't they? There we go. Now, we're almost ready. I do miss having a kitchen with all manner of knives and cups and crocks so that I can store food. But perhaps that will happen again one of these days. In the meantime, I've managed to keep one china plate intact, see? But the rest are all wood, tin, and some are pewter. All right, so I'm going to throw that in there. And I have made some breadcrumbs here from the bread. Here, I think a few more are in order. Well, that will have to do, I think. And there's, I think I will use some of our ration of butter. We get butter or cheese, 6/7 of an ounce every day. I'll leave the rest to enjoy with the bread. Maybe tuck it away from the flies. And what did I do with my pot hook? Here it is. There. That looks nice, doesn't it? Now I need a piece of wool to bring that out. And look on the dog cart. Here. Now, pop that in here for now. There. I need to put this down, perhaps on here. And we'll add the apples. And some sugar. Look. Sugar. I have a little piece from a cone of sugar here. And I don't have sugar nippers anymore, so I just grate off a piece of sugar. There we go. Now sugar's expensive, so I'm going to need to save this and tuck it away here. There's the rest of the sugar cone. And here we have sugar. And I'm going to pour some maple syrup in. Now, this bottle has lost its cork, so it won't travel very well, but for now, if I just put a piece of cloth over it and tie it down, that will keep the flies off it and keep the maple sugar or the maple syrup clean. It's just too time consuming to make maple sugar, or I would. It's very difficult to have liquids carrying around with us. Now, There's a little piece of dried apple. Perhaps I'll pop it in too. How hot is this? Not bad. And there's the pandowdy. A hazard for all women cooking over a fire is that we get our petticoats caught. That would be very frightening, and it's a common hazard, unfortunately. So I pop my petticoats, look after them as well as I can, and try not to get too close to the fire. Hot hook, and we'll put the lid on our Dutch oven. There we are. And so, no, it's not quite closed enough. That's better. And now, in order to have it cooked from above, I need to find some logs that are still burning. That's a trick. I think what I'll do is relocate the pot first. Still not quite there. That's better. Now, this one. And now we need to move it back, preferably without setting my petticoats on fire. There. Right. We'll leave that for a little while and see how we're doing. The hokates are baking slowly, and I'm just going to turn around the peas porridge because it's baking one-sided. The last thing that I thought we would do, oh no, we're all finished. I've covered everything up here. Our rations or our foodstuffs are too precious to waste on the flies. But it occurs to me that I hadn't put any cinnamon or nutmeg in our pandowdy. So I'm going to cut a little bit now. I have a cinnamon stick, as you can see. There. I do wish I had a grater, but I don't. So we'll do it this way. And a nutmeg. Most useful spice. There. I'll put those away right now before I lose them with my peppercorns. Here. Those are far too precious to leave out. And now we'll look at the pound dowdy and see how it's doing. This and we'll knock these off. I have to be careful, I don't want to get all these ashes in my dessert. There, oh my, that is well and truly done. It is time to dowdy it. I'll get it off the heat first. There we go. There. We'll let that cool off a little bit and then maybe put it on here. Oh, maybe I can do it right now. And there we are, apple pan dowdy. Cover it up. And we'll have a look at our hoe cakes. They are cooking slowly. The stone is very hot. Oh, coming along. I think that one's the closest to being done, and it's not done yet. Bread is always in short supply here. The reason being that it's very difficult to find sources of yeast. The men have beer, and sometimes we can skim out some of the yeast from the beer, but trying to find something to make the bread rise is difficult. And there aren't that many bakeries around here. So hoe cake is what we have for now. And look at this. Oh my. Peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold. Peas porridge in the pot, 9 days old. Some like it hot, some like it cold, some like it in the pot, 9 days old. We'll have it fresh tonight. Well, let's have a look and see how we're doing. The ash cakes are taking a long time to cook. I really made the batter a little too wet, and that's my own fault. I should know better by now. I'm going to gather up the fire a little bit. I don't need so much now that the pan dowdy is finished. And let's pull this out of the way. Whoops. Well, there's a reason why they're called ash cakes. There we go. That's a little neater. now, let's see if I can persuade my ash cakes to cook a little more quickly without burning. Now there's a trick. Well, if I can do it without burning myself, we'll go upwind. Always wise to be aware of where the wind is. If you're downwind, the smoke's in your eyes. If you're upwind, you may have the wind blowing your petticoats into the fire. All right. Now, I think my my peas porridge is well and truly done. Let's see. Oh yes, look at that. A nice chunk of pork. Look at that. Parsnips and carrots and beans and onions. What more could you ask? Well, so now we are just waiting for the hoe cakes. We're closer to the fire. I'm hoping it won't be that much longer. And we have some butter left, and we have bread, and so we're going to have a feast. Well, one of those hoe cakes is looking quite nice. I'm going to bring it off the fire, off the stone, and see what it is like. Oh, yes. That's not bad. It's cooked all the way through. It's a little crunchy around the edges, but that's to be expected. All right, I think our meal is ready. I think the sergeant will be here soon. So we have here South Mandeli, peas porridge, ready for tonight. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you again in another century.
As I said earlier, reenactors learn by doing, and I've learned that I really don't like hoe cakes a whole lot, but it's been interesting. One thing that we didn't demonstrate was how difficult making a fire was, or how time-consuming it can be. So the following pictures will show you a colleague demonstrating how to make a fire without the use of matches. We much prefer matches, of course. This is a flint and steel used to make a spark, used by Dave Forrest of the King's Royal Regiment of New York, where he is striking a spark using the steel, trying to direct the spark into a small ball of lint. As you can see, it's not an easy process. He continues to try. However, here he has a tiny spark in the lint, and he's blowing on it to produce a flame, and success! He has created a flame. Another thing that I discussed a little bit was food adultery. Bill Bryson, in his book At Home, said the following on this subject. Almost nothing, it seems, escaped the devious wiles of food adulterers. Sugar and other expensive ingredients were often stretched with gypsum, plaster of Paris, sand, dust, and other forms of daft, as such additives were collectively known. Butter reportedly was bulked out with tallow and lard. A tea drinker, according to various authorities, might unwittingly take in anything from sawdust to powdered sheep's dung. Sulfuric acid was added to vinegar for extra sharpness. Chalk to milk, turpentine to gin. Arsenate of copper was used to make vegetables greener or to make jellies glisten. Lead chromate gave bakery products a golden glow and brought radiance to mustard. Lead acetate was added to drinks as a sweetener, and red lead somehow made Gloucester cheese lovelier to behold, if not safer to eat. There was hardly a foodstuff, it seems, that couldn't be improved or made more economical to the retailer through a little deceptive manipulation. So the common people, when they were bartering with local farmers, probably had healthier food. The food provided by the army would probably be subject to this kind of adulteration because it would have been gotten from larger retailers and in another country. Something we didn't talk a lot about was the wealthy. We've talked about the poor people or the common people because those are almost invisible in diaries and books. They're not often referred to. We have more information on the wealthy. As an example, we have a list of items from Captain Murdoch McLean's inventory. He was an officer of the 84th Regiment of Foot. He listed milk, butter, sugars both cone and brown, cheese, mustard, salt, mace, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, pepper, obviously spices are a thing, mutton ham, bread, vinegar, fine vermicelli, macaroni, India soy, ketchup, India mangoes, walnuts, almonds, bottle gingers, French olives, bottle anchovies, bottles of apricots, pears, and peaches, green sage, lemon and raspberry syrups, chocolate, raisins, Gore cheese. The ketchup referred to is not the variety, the tomato-based variety we're used to. It was probably a sauce, possibly made of mushrooms. The bottles that you referred to would be preserved pears and peaches in a syrup. The wealthy had access to dried fruits, but they would have different fruits, such as the more exotic fruits, dates, figs, and apricots. They also had a lot of alcoholic beverages, a lot of wine, and also rum, porter, Madeira, port, Lisbon, claret, and brandy. Now those would be heavily taxed or possibly smuggled depending on the diplomatic climate at the time, because they would be obtained from France, Portugal, or Spain, and diplomatic relations really influenced the availability of these things. Another thing the wealthy were able to have was cakes and sweets that were leavened, generally leavened with beaten eggs, 8 or 10 eggs beaten sometimes for an hour or 90 minutes to leaven to make the cake a little fluffier. Even so, it's a little denser than the type we're used to nowadays. Their lives were obviously a little more comfortable, and they had more continuing access to better cooking facilities. Anyway, that concludes what I've prepared so far. It has been a pleasure spending time with you both now and in the 18th century, and I hope we meet again soon. Bye.